This is part 2 of the 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge of 2023 compilation. Don't worry, you don't have to watch them in any order, but I will put a link in the description box and at the end of the video for the other 2 videos. Do you have a big quilting project coming up? How are you doing on your New Year's resolutions? In this video, I thought I'd just come and keep you company while you're working on those projects. Last year, I hosted a 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge. We had so much fun doing the challenge. And so what I thought I would do is to get you geared up and get you started. I gathered up all the videos that I made in December last year, all 31 of them, where I showed you a different project every single day, where I worked on each of my projects for 15 minutes that day. I am gathering all of them up into 3 videos. Because there's 33 videos, there's an introductory video at the beginning, there's a 31 videos for one for each day, and then there was a award ceremony at the end. And what I'm going to do in this series of videos is to gather them up into 3 different videos so that you can watch them from start to finish without having to go look for each of them separately and worrying out which ones you've already seen and which ones you missed. I decided to make them 3 videos instead of just 1 because I do want you to get some sleep and get some rest. With these 3 videos will give you plenty of time to make progress on your own quilting projects. I had to admit that I also have a selfish reason for showing these to you again, in that I need your feedback. I'd like your feedback on how to make this year's quilt challenge even better than last year's. I have some ideas of my own, but I'd like to gather yours. Are there any particular projects that you want to make sure show up again this year? Are there any that you feel are not necessary to be seen again? Either way is fine. I'm really excited to host the challenge again this year, and I'd love to get your feedback on how to make the 2024 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge even better than last year's challenge. You don't have to watch these 3 videos in any order because there was a different project in every single day of the 31 days. I hope you enjoy sewing along with me in this compilation and hope that you'll join me in December for the 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge 2024. Welcome to Quilt in Color. We're working on the 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge, and today we're going to be working on the Moon Dance quilt. The Moon Dance quilt was a block of the month by Beth Ferrier, and basically there were these piece blocks. Let me just show these to you. This one, hopefully you can see the whole thing in the camera. Very unique designs. I use batiks and fabrics that look like batiks. And each of the blocks are different from each other, and I use a large variety of colorways on this quilt, all with a purple background. And then these are the alternate blocks. And they all look the same pretty much, except for slight fabric variations. And then underneath this pile is also an alternate block that fits between these. And it's basically a flower with a leaf. So I used a variety of colors here to help balance out all the colors in the quilt. And this is a needle turn applique. There's a needle. So as you can see here, the part that isn't finished yet is a needle turn applique. I have a lot of the blocks done. In fact, I took this quilt with me to jury duty and was able to do a lot of the applique there in the courthouse. But I have some pieces left that need to be added to the backgrounds, and so today you get to watch me applique some more. So I have these fabrics ready that need to be appliqued, and I'm going to choose the blue one since I have the blue thread out. This is a regular weight thread, so it just trying to make sure that I'm not using the quilting threads for this one because I want the thread to be relatively thin. I'm going to keep the thread relatively short so that it doesn't knot up on me. And the knot is easy to hide. I can either hide it on the very bottom underneath the background, or I can hide it underneath the applique, whichever works for me is fine. And I've also clipped a little bit in the corner so that it'll be easier to turn everything under, like that. So it's just a matter of estimating how much. It doesn't have to be in the middle. I think maybe I don't want it to be exactly in the middle. I don't use a hoop when I applique, and I don't use a hoop when I embroider. I think I've noticed a pattern for my incomplete quilts. A lot of them have a lot of repetitious blocks, and a lot of them have needle turn applique that takes a long time to stitch. And although I really like the feel of appliquing, it's very relaxing and enjoyable to me, it does take a lot longer to get anything done. It just takes a lot longer to get anything done, and so other projects wind up getting in front of it. I know when I'm making piece quilts, it's just easy to keep piecing, and when I'm making applique, it's easier to just keep appliquing, and so making the switch from piecing to applique sometimes takes a bit for me. And the reason I'm not putting this applique right in the center is because that's how the pattern works, is that there's some overlap between the blocks that just adds an interesting effect. It's supposed to look like the flowers are just scattered throughout the quilt. So I'm making a turn here and just folding under. The part that I just fold under, the part that comes right in front of it, and then when I'm about at 1/4 of an inch, then it's time to fold under some more. And you can see, as per usual, that all my points are not perfect, and I'm fine with that. Flowers don't all look the same, so the fact that these flowers don't look the same is okay with me too. This is an old quilt pattern. It came from probably when I was still on America Online, AOL. I really like how the secondary blocks really create a pattern across the quilt. These secondary blocks make a step throughout the quilt. And they work as a great backdrop for the piece blocks. They make the piece blocks more exciting without these alternate blocks taking too much of the attention. And I suppose I could just not have all of these applique blocks. I can probably just make the quilt the way it is without any additional applique blocks, because I do have enough to put on the quilt, but I want to make the large amount because I've already cut them out and I've already done a lot of the applique. I've already done the circle and the star, so it's just, I'm only on the last step, so I might as well just finish it off. I think when a quilt stalls, and it's okay to change the plan, but I like the plan on this one, so I'm not going to change it. Just turning it here to make sure it goes all the way inside the corner. I got one petal done. I think I'm supposed to have some leaves added too, but I don't know where the leaf is right now. I didn't try to find it. When you're doing applique of any kind, it's best to match the fabric that you're using. So that's why I'm using the blue thread, so that it won't show as much. But I don't worry too much about it. If it shows a little bit, I think it's actually good, because then people can notice that it's hand turned needle, that it's handwork, I guess. Kind of not, but I got it out. If you crease it, that makes it easy also to keep it inside, to have the rye just turn under. And then you can see what it's going to look like before you start the securing it. I really like appliquing flowers because flowers look different in nature, so any variations are just variations, and they're not mistakes. And the straight path on an applique is much easier than any turns. But these curves are pretty smooth, so it's not really difficult. It's just a matter of being patient with them. This pattern was issued in a news group back when we had news groups. And it was nice to be able to see the chatter from everybody about their progress on the quilt, and it was nice to be able to work together with a group of people on this quilt. I think sometimes, if you're doing something with a group, it has more, it's easier to be motivated to keep going because everybody else is, trying to keep up with other people. It's nice for everybody to be pretty much in the same general space, even though there's no rush to finish it. It's obviously because this is not finished, but it's nice to be able to see what other people's quilts look like. Actually, it was on. We were not able to see what other people's quilts look like. I don't think. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think there was a place on the news group where you could put your pictures up, so you could see what other people's blocks look like. Now that I think about it, but it was not as easy as it is now. To be able to see other people's pictures, you'd have to go to a separate place. But now, like especially on Facebook, you can see different people using different colorways and getting inspired about how people were adapting the pattern for their own needs. Or how slight variations of a shade. So somebody else was making a blue quilt and you could see how the changing just a shade a little bit affects the look of the quilt. It looks like my time is up. I was able to get 2 petals and 2.5 petals, I guess, finished. This video is a part of a series of videos I'm doing this month where I work on one of my old quilts for 15 minutes. I hope that you sewed along with me. Please let me know in the comment section what you worked on and how much you got done in 15 minutes. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you tomorrow. Don't forget to give me feedback in the comment box to let me know whether you want to see this project in this year. Hello, welcome to Quilt in Color. This is day 12 of 15 minutes to quilt. Today we're going to be working on a rail fence quilt. Let me show you one that I've already made. This one uses all sorts of scraps from all other projects I was working on. And the quilt that we're going to be working on today is also made completely with scraps. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is the project box for the rail fence project. And you can see that all it has in here is a whole bunch of rail fences that have already been made. This rail fence project uses 4 rails instead of 3 rails like the other one. And you can also see that sometimes I do let some of the rails be pieced instead of plain. Some of these are stolen from the Dots and Dashes quilt. But right now there are no 1.5 inch strips. There's no 1.5 inch fabrics left, so we're going to have to cut some more today. Each of these to me look like a beautiful work of art, and I look forward to seeing what they look like in a quilt. You may have noticed that the 4th rail is a dark color compared to the other ones, and that's why this quilt is called 4th rail, because of the dark color. My hope is that the 4th color here will lead the eye and form a design on the quilt. So let's cut some more scraps. I'm cutting these in big long chains because I can sew them next to each other and then subcut them into the appropriate lengths, because this quilt does not have that requirement that there's no duplicates on a particular block, or there's no rule that there's no duplicates on a particular fabric combination. So the looser you make your rules for your particular quilt, the easier it is to make a quick quilt. There's a brand new rotary blade on this. I recommend that you press your strips before you cut them. Do as I say, not do as I do. Three, four. I think this is going to be big enough for the rail fence quilt, but it'll work just fine for the ducks quilt. This fabric is a piece backing for the Star Wars quilt. There's the dots here from the selvage. We can use the blue section here. I think I'll be alright because this will be in the selvage too. It'll be in the same allowance. I think this may be a left-handed ruler because, as you can see when I'm cutting here, this is in the wrong spot, and the same thing happens when I turn it over the other direction. So in order for me to do it correctly, it'd have to be this lengthways, and that's hard to do that when I have this much fabric. I think I purchased this specifically so that I could cut both sides of a particular fabric, but then I got lazy and I didn't switch out when I need to switch out. So pretty. Really pretty fabrics like this I like to put in a large variety of quilts so that it gets to share the glory with some of my quilts. The rail fence block is so versatile that I think I could make rail fence quilts the rest of my life and still not have any duplicates. I had some problem with the camera ran out of battery, so I don't have a full 15 minutes of work in this video. But I got most of it. This video is one of a series of videos where I show you all of the projects that I've been working on and show you how much work can get done in 15 minutes at a time. I hope that you sewed along with me so I can give you an entry in the drawing. Just let me know in the comments below what you worked on today and how much you got done, and I'll give you an entry in the drawing. Thank you for watching, thank you for your support, and I'll see you tomorrow. There won't be any prizes in this series of videos in the 2023 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge, but there definitely will be prizes in the 2024 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge, and I do hope that you'll join me in December for that challenge. Be sure that you subscribe so you don't miss it. Hello, welcome to Quilt in Color. Today is day 13 of the 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge. I hope you sew along with me so that you can get an entry in the drawing. Today I'm working on the kaleidoscope quilt. The kaleidoscope quilt is a really beautiful traditional pattern that you make with triangles, but it looks like circles. Here's a sample here of one. I started mine a long time ago and I didn't think I was up to the challenge of making specific colorways. So mine is a basic kaleidoscope with just lights and darks. I started this quilt a long time ago before I really had the skill level to make this quilt. But I specialize in making mistakes even now. So I'll show you what I do about the mistakes that I made in the past. And I probably will make some new ones today. And I'll show you what I do about those as well. So let's get started. The kaleidoscope block is made with equilateral triangles. And basically you just alternate light, dark, all the way around. So it's pretty easy to put together. And then you put the half square triangles on 4 sides to make the block. So on half of the blocks you put the corner triangles on the light fabric so that the dark forms this plus sign, and on the other half you put the corner triangles on the dark triangles so that it forms a cross. It forms a times sign. And then when you put the blocks together, you just alternate the plus and the times, plus, times, and when you are finished, you end up with this beautiful design that looks like circles that go all the way around, and these circles lead your eye all the way throughout the quilt. So in my box, there's a lot of these triangles already cut, but I've decided that I'm not going to sew these together yet because I might just leave it. I have enough finished blocks that maybe I'll just make the quilt the size that it is with the finished blocks, and I can decide after that whether or not I need to make more blocks or whether I can repurpose these triangles into a different block. So let me show you what the blocks look like. So these blocks can easily be made by the confident beginner, and the beginner may not notice the mistakes that they make. You can see that my points are pretty good in the middle here, and there's no big lumps here. Some of the triangles may be suspect, but I think they're doable as well. The points look like they're fine. There's a 1/4 inch seam, room for a seam allowance. So let's just go through them so you can see the variety of the fabrics that's being used. This fabric is using the Drunkard's Path block. A lot of these are used in other quilts, and some of them are purchased specifically for this quilt. But you can see that I have the green and purple colorway. And I was told that green and purple needs to have some orange in it, so there's some orange or yellow to help balance it out in case your eye is looking for that other color. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of blocks already made. This one needs to be sewn. Okay, there's also, I probably had already made the same decision before, so go ahead and start sewing the blocks together because it's a really exciting thing to do. And so these blocks are ones that are sewn together. This one has been sewn together correctly. You can see that I had some problems with getting the points correct, And I think that's the problem with this block for a confident beginner, is that it's easy to make the original blocks, but putting them together is where you can wind up having problems because you need to match the points here. I think these points here are close enough to not matter too much in the quilt, because your eye will still just be led away from that intersection. So I'm going to leave these the way they are. This particular block, you can see, is a problem block because it's got two multiplication signs, and we need one that is a plus and a multiplication, plus and times. So this is the way the quilt block needs to be done, with the plus and the times, and not the one with the times and the times. So this one will have to be ripped out and fixed. I have a bunch of other blocks that have already been sewn together, so let me show those to you. You can see this one's a little bit bad, but it's fine. You can see the plus and the times. Plus and times, this one's beautifully sewn. Plus and times, this one's beautiful too. So you can see, if you just try hard enough, it'll work out okay. It's just a matter of making sure that you match the points. My philosophy is that you make the quilts that you think are the most beautiful, because there's a limit in my lifetime of how many quilts that I can make. So even though I didn't have the skill level to make these, that's how I can build. The only way I can build up the skill level is to make them. And you can see that I didn't trim the blocks either. They are just cut the way they are. They're sewn together, and so I think I'm just going to continue with that because it looks like it's working out okay. Eventually I think I do. Eventually I will, even if I didn't. Yeah. You can see I did cut off the dog ears after I sewed them. And I will still do that just to avoid some bulk. And it helps to lay them out with the plus times in the same order always, so that it keeps you more organized. But eventually when you sew them together, you'll turn them over so you're alternating the times and the plus, like this. There's some more blocks. I like this color here. I think it adds a lot to the quilt. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of blocks already made. They're all scrappy. There's a lot of variety in all of the fabrics. And it's just a matter of getting the darks and the lights separated. And that's one way. A lot of people complain about scrap quilts looking like too much of a mishmash. And if you make specific colors, that does make it a little bit easier to make it look more planned. But really, any colorways that you use will be fine as long as you keep track of the plus and the minus, as long as you keep track of the darks and the lights. That's it. I think there's plenty of blocks here to make a wall hanging size quilt, maybe even a little bit bigger, maybe a lap quilt size. And so I think today I'm just going to go ahead and just start putting together the blocks. There are two things that I want to tell you about this before we get started. First of all, I'm not using a design wall for this quilt. Generally, it's a good idea to use a design wall to make sure your colors are balanced and the quilt looks the way you expect it to look, but I think for this one I'm okay with going ahead and putting it together. I think it's scrappy, and I think there's enough variety in the fabrics that it'll look fine. And the other thing that I want to tell you is about pinning. You want to make sure that you pin these blocks correctly. So what I like to do is I take the pin, take a nice thin pin, as the thinnest pin is good, put the pin in the intersection. You want to put the pin exactly in the intersection of where these two blocks meet each other, and then you want to put it through the intersection of the other piece. This is not a tutorial for how to make these, but just saying it since we're here. And then once I do that, once I put the pins in both places, then I make sure that all the block is square, and then put the pin the rest of the way through, like this. And if it needs additional pins, I can do that as well. I think this one is fine the way it is, and I can hold on to the edges without worrying about pinning it. So I'll go ahead and sew. All of these are plus block. There's a times block here, so I can put these together. And even though there's a fabric here that's the same as a fabric here, I'm okay with that. I think overall in the look of the quilt, it's not going to be that obvious. Joining this intersection, do the next intersection, arrange the block, both sides. Lost a pin here. Once I arrange the block, I can push this rest of the pin in. And you can see this one's a little bit less. I didn't press it properly, so I can just try to get it as close to the edge as possible. This is a pressing problem. So I'm going to make sure that my pin is not folding that fabric in a way it's not supposed to. And see, now you can see that it fits. Pressing these blocks before I start sewing them would have gone a long way in making sure that I can avoid more problems. Just holding on to the edges here to make sure they line up right. Get the pin out of the way. Another plus block. Another plus block. Here's a times block. I'm going to use a different plus block for this one because this is a nice exciting block, and I do want an exciting block, but maybe this is too much for, since there's interesting blocks here too, interesting fabrics here. Have a little plainer block on this one. This is a cross, this is a plus, that'll work. This one also has one fabric that's in both blocks. This block does not have a 1/4 inch seam here, or might not. We'll do the best we can, and I'm fine with it if it doesn't match exactly. I'm going ahead and matching the 1/4 inch, even though this is a little bit less than that. I could resew this block. I'm going to resew this seam actually. You can see it's just a matter of sewing it just a little bit more on this side to make it work. So I might as well fix it since we can, since it's an easy fix. Most of the corrections will be pretty easy to fix. If you have a mistake in a previous block, you can probably fix it. Okay, my 15 minutes is up. I was able to sew 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks and fix one of them. This video is one of a series of videos where I show you all of the quilts that I have in the works. I hope that you did sew along with me, and if you did, just let me know in the comments what you worked on and how much you got done in your 15 minutes to sew today, and I'll give you an entry in the drawing. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you can make sure that you get each of the day's videos. There's a link here that'll show you yesterday's video in case you missed that one. Thank you for your support, and we'll see you tomorrow. Make sure you leave a comment to let me know whether you want to see this project again this year. Hello, welcome to Quilt in Color. Today is day 14 of the 15 minutes to quilt challenge. Today I'm going to be working on an album quilt. This is another one of my quilts that I started making before I had the skills to make it. Together we're going to figure out how to miter the corners of the sashing on all of the blocks in this quilt. Let's get started. Okay, the blocks for this quilt are in a scrapbook box. I really like the scrapbook boxes as a way to store them because they can fit 12.5-inch blocks. So the front is a pattern. This is what the album quilt looks like. Hope I'm not shaking the camera because the scrap box is touching the tripod. And as you can see, there's templates on here. This is a really old pattern that I worked with, and I actually had the patterns, although I did write down the sizes, so it does look like I did use a rotary cutter for this quilt. You can see each of the blocks have a sashing around them. And this is what the quilt looks like. And let's look at what my blocks look like. Move this out of the way. Move them out of the way. So I got the bright idea that I could use this sashing for this quilt. And as you can see, the sashing is like a border print. And my bright idea was that I could miter the corners on this border print to make a frame around the block itself. So let's just look at the blocks. I really like the colors on this quilt. These are all upside down. In my memory, it seemed like I had sewn a lot more of the border prints than I actually did. I thought I had gotten a lot more progress in sewing these than I did. I think there are 2 of each fabric, I'm not sure. And I know for sure that I've already given one of them away as a pillow. Hopefully it was an extra block. And then there's some, this is what I was remembering that they would look like, is that they already have the sashing sewn on, and then I was having trouble finding a way to miter the corners. You can see 3 of those, this one is done. 3 of the corners have been mitered, and this one just needs 1 more. We'll save that one for today. And then it looks like we have ones that are finished. So this is what the finished block will look like. It has the album block, and it's got the border print, and the block is mitered, so it forms a nice frame around it. Let me show you the frame. Sorry, this camera is not up high enough for you to be able to see the whole thing all at once. I'll have to save that one so I can show you one on the other camera. Here's another one that's done. Here's another one that's done. Here's another one that's done. And there's another one that's done. And then there's lots of fabric left over to make the rest of them. Some of them have already been cut out. Looks, it's fussy cut so that they will fit correctly. You can see the print looks like this. And that means I'm going to be losing some of the fabric here when I'm making the fussy cut. And these have not been sewn, so maybe today we can work on these 3 blocks. Okay, so there's 3 ways that I can think about mitering corners. Okay, so the correct way to do this is that you would sew this border onto the block and then stop at 1/4 of an inch before you get to the end, because that's where this seam would stop, and the next one, because that's where they would meet. So you stop this at 1/4 inch. You stop this one at 1/4 inch. You can see on this one that this one's a little more than 1/4 an inch. And then the next step, once you have done that part, is that you fold this block like this into a triangle. Make sure you match the prints together. Make sure you match the borders together. And then you start from 1/4 of an inch here, and so this way, I guess this would be straight this way. sew this together. So what you would do here is to match these, and then you'd be able to start here at the seam where the two seams intersect. Start here and then sew the rest of this way, so that when you do that, I'm going to put a pin here so you can see this as being sewn already. And when you put it together, then you'll have the seam here, and I'll match. Now the important thing about being able to do this is that this block must be square. And as you've seen from my video yesterday, making blocks square was not something that I knew about. I didn't really trim blocks before. And so I want, like you can see, I still hear the dog. I haven't even trimmed off the dog ears. So then I wind up, if you don't properly stop at a 1/4 inch here and here, then you could wind up with not finding the exact intersection to start sewing this thing, and so these may get bulky here, or these might not match each other correctly. Another way I thought about doing this is to applique this, because if you applique it, then you can exactly see where everything's gonna line up, and that'll make sure that it's done. Another option is to, once everything is lined up correctly, to sew this down. And even though you can see this little seam here, I think if you do it small enough, if you do it close enough to the edge, I don't think it'll be that obvious. But so far in this quilt, it looks like I was able to do it in a hidden way. So I might either hand applique this, or another option is to baste everything. And when you baste it, then you can make sure everything is lined up right. It'll be easy to pull out the stitches if it isn't, and try again. And another thing is that you can press everything and make sure that you know exactly where the seam will be. And then once you do that, then it just does make it easier to be able to sew with a machine. So let me think about a plan for this one, and then we'll see where to go from here. This has been a long time since I mitered corners, and this is not an easy thing to do for me, but I think it'll be fine. You can see that I cut these a little bit bigger than I needed them to be. Here, on this side, you can see the excess fabric here. And that way, if there was any problems, I had enough leeway to be able to make sure that there was plenty of fabric to make the corner. So I'll press these blocks first, and you can see that I haven't trimmed off the rest of these blocks yet. This is excess fabric that can be used for other projects. So what am I doing? I'm taking these 3 blocks, I'm going to press them because I want to make sure that they are not wrinkled, and then we'll get to sewing. Normally I would press upstairs with the ironing board and the bigger iron, but I only have 15 minutes, so we're going to go ahead and show you on the small mat. And this tripod's not working right, so you get real close-ups on the pressing. But that might be good, that you can see the block close up. You can see I use a muslin as a background to keep with that old-fashioned look. And you can see that this is a really nice miter here. This one, yeah, you can see the nice miter. This one is a little sloppy. This one is really bad because it's got the pucker in here. And this one's pretty bad too because it has a pucker. So at some point I might try to fix that, or maybe I'll just let it go. I have to decide that later. I think in the overall scheme of things, it probably won't be all that obvious, but I might try to fix these two eventually. This one looks pretty good. Even though this isn't exactly straight, I think it's close enough. It'll depend on how it matches with the rest of the block. And I haven't decided whether I'm going to use a plain sashing in between these or whether I'll just sew these together next to each other, side by side. Probably a sashing would work better the way the pattern is, but that'll make the quilt really big because this sashing is wider than this one. My sashing is wider than the one that's in the pattern, but I can fix that by just using fewer number of blocks, and I can turn more of these into pillows if I need to. Another option that I have is to avoid the miters. I have a lot of blocks. I can just use a different border fabric, different sashing fabric. Another option I have is just to use a different sashing fabric, and then I wouldn't have to miter any corners. But I have a good number of them done, so I really don't want to start over again. But what I can try to do here is see if I can miter these. If I can turn this one, is that? Turn both of these into 45-degree angles. This one looks pretty good actually. You can see, oh, you can't see. Put this down. Okay, so if I could just turn this one at a 45-degree angle and this one at a 45-degree angle, you can see that the matching works pretty well here. Actually, I like that. Okay, I can press these down. And it looks like the way I'm doing it is I'm starting at 1/4 of an inch in to do the turn. Well, this one doesn't do that. Not sure how far in this needs to be. I think probably it needs to go up. Like this. Let's press this and pin it, and we'll see. Pull the iron out of the way so I don't burn myself, and then I could pin these. Oops, need to pin them inside. I'm going to fold the quilt top. I'm going to fold the block in half, and that will take me to making both of these match each other. And then I can pin where I had I think the join has to be this way and not way over here, which is what the creases look like. So it'll look like this, maybe. Like this. I'll put one close to the seam and then open it to see what it's going to look like. Okay. Have to make sure that the block itself is underneath, and then it's possible that the pins themselves are kind of in the way. Okay, so I'm going to take this center pin out because it's not matching exactly. I think this one needs to be folded in a little bit more to match. Like this. Make sure that this is straight and this is straight. Like this. I had taken this quilt into a local quilt shop to ask them what I was doing wrong, and that's what they said, is that the original block isn't square, and that's what's causing the problems with this quilt, with making the mitered borders. But I'm an improv quilter, and I think I can fudge it to make it work. Okay, so if I press this down, this is a crease I can use for this side. Looks like I'm off a little bit again. What happened? Okay, so there's a little bit of a gap here, but I think that my trying to make it perfect is going to make it worse rather than trying to do it the way it is. So that was one option that I was thinking about, and I think I have done some this way, is instead of folding both of the fabrics, I just folded one of them and appliqued it down, and then I didn't have to worry about the other one. But let's see if we can find a way to do it the right way, just to see if we can figure out how to do proper miters. Okay, so if I'm doing this the right way, I think it would just sew these together, but I want to make sure that like this spot matches this spot, and this matches the line on here. I think that's right. Didn't do that perfectly. That's a little better, and that's better too. This one looks lumpy. But that might just be because of the way the fabric is laid. Nope. I think this one needs to go out a little bit farther, maybe. There's some work that's finicky and some work that is not. And I think sometimes it just takes some time to figure out what you're doing, and if it's not working right, to figure out a different plan. And this one here I think now matches okay. This one's not lumpy. This one is not exactly perfect, but I think it's close enough for my taste. And then This one also is, so I think this looks good to me. And it's a matter of making sure that I match. I can go ahead without moving anything and pinning these. It's the pin that's making it lumpy now. Pretty sure. Yep, I think it's going to look good if I just sew these two together the way where the pins are exactly. The pins help show what it's going to look like at the end, and the pins also help show exactly where to sew. This seam is not properly sewn all the way to the 1/4 inch. Tiny stitches. Looks better. Of course, So I had to take out this pin to do that. Let's see if it's going to look okay. Yep. It's a little lumpy, but I think it'll be fine. I'm following the crease line that was made when we did the pressing. Now the quality inspection, the big reveal. This is lumpy here. Still a little bit lumpy, but not too bad. Basting always works for this. And also I have another way that I've made mitered corners in the past, is that instead of making a Y seam, what I've done is turn the miter part of it into a half square triangle and then sewn them as a regular block, and that worked really well for me too. So I've made a decision about this quilt. I do not want to be making mitered corners in all of the blocks. So what I'm going to do is separate out the quilt into two parts. I'm going to take the ones that already have mitered borders and put those in one quilt. Maybe it'll be whatever, depending on how many blocks there are. It'll just depend on how big that quilt is going to be. And for the blocks that don't have any sashing on them, I'm going to find a sashing that does not require mitered borders and see what I can make out of that. I think that this was probably supposed to be a pretty big quilt, and since I don't really make that many big quilts anymore, I'm not trying to make a quilt for my bed. I think it'll be fine if I just turn this into two projects. And for the sashing that I've already cut, that I've already fussy cut, I don't mind using that for a border on the whole quilt, because it's mitering borders is not that bad. It's okay. I'm not saying I'll never do mitered borders again, but I just don't want to have to do them for every single block. So I might have to just sew these again, sew them up, since I have cut them into widths, or maybe I'll make quilts that are this size to be able to use them up. But so that's my new plan. I'm going to make a note on an index card so that I'll know the next time I pick this quilt up that this is actually 2 or more quilts. So at least now this block is finished. This video is one of a series of videos where I'm showing you each of my projects one by one and working on them 15 minutes at a time. I hope you enjoy seeing all of the progress on all of my quilts and get some inspiration, get some advice. I hope that you join me and sew along with me. And if you do, just let me know in the comments below what you worked on, how much you got done in your 15 minutes, and I'll give you an entry in the drawing. Good luck to you. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you again tomorrow. How's your progress on your quilting project? Hello, welcome to Quilt in Color. This is day 15 of the 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge. Today we're going to be working on this spiderweb block, this red and white block. And what my plan was when I was doing it was to applique onto a background fabric and put some other applique pieces around it, some decorative elements, in order to be able to applique it pretty quickly. Since this could look like a piece block, I didn't want to try to piece it into a background, so I put a backing on here, turn it over, and then the plan was to just sew it down onto a background, which is exactly what I did. But I do not like the gray background for this. I thought that it would look good to me because it's scarlet and gray, but I just don't like it. It looked like I had zigzagged it originally, and what it looked, I just picked out all the applique stitches, and now my plan is to put this on a different background. And then I can still use this fabric for the backing. And as you can see, there's already batting on here, so it's just a matter of putting a different background to put the spiderweb block onto. Hopefully this will be a nice, quick, and simple project to make up for yesterday's work. So now I have some white fabric that I found, and I'm trying to decide how big I want the background to be. So it would have to be at least this much, maybe, I don't know. There'll be room for a seam allowance here. I don't think I need very much of a background, so maybe this would be good. So this much on both sides would make it around here, I think would be good. Okay. Now I have to decide the other direction, how much I want. I think we were over here. So on this direction, about here, I think that's what we said. So I need to cut around here. Sorry, the tripod isn't sturdy. Oh, this is not even. It's important to keep this part even in order to avoid the V's that you get if you don't have the fabric at a good even site. But if it's not perfect, it's fine because we can trim it down later. Okay, so this, we were over here. I need to cut along the fold in order to get this part separated. This was something I learned at a quilt shop, because normally I would cut with scissors, or try to cut exactly on the fold, but basically they just use a rotary cutter right here. And this is kind of nice because then the fold is gone, and then you don't have to try to press it or anything like that, and you don't lose a lot of fabric that way either. Okay, so this is the correct direction. This is white on white, so it's important to make sure that we're looking at it in the right direction, and then the quilt will be on top of it like this. So now I'm going to sandwich this with the other fabric. So this is the batting that we had before. Pull off the strings so it doesn't show through. So let's think about how we're going to do this. We could make the sandwich and then applique this thing on top of it. So we could birth it and then applique it, or we could try to applique it on the white by itself first. Either way would work fine. So I guess I think I want to go ahead and sandwich it and then turn it, and then if I leave a hole here, then I can actually turn it all the way over, and this will hide the hole that we make doing that. Okay, so let me make sure that I have the right size for this. I think I want a square actually. So if I make this square, I'm going to just fold it over here and cut it, and then that's the size I'll use for the backing and the batting. Turn it this direction so we can see what we're doing. Okay, so I'm going to cut here, so it's a square. Okay. For those who like to measure, this is exactly 18 inches. And there should also be 18 inches on this side. Yes, it is. And so now I need 18 inches for this. I'm going to turn it this direction because the fabric is smaller than the batting. Looks pretty even on this side, but I'll trim it again just to be sure. Oh, it's a good thing I'm trimming. Okay. Usually I have two rulers when I'm doing something this big. Backwards too. Okay. So this, I'm just going to go ahead and just use my mat for this. Make sure this is lined up correctly on this side. Starting this exactly at 0, 18 inches. Is over here. Okay. Oops. And went at an angle. So maybe we'll do 17.5. Okay, I need to trim off this part here. This is the Is this a selvage? Yeah, that's a selvage. And you can see that I did not have a good perpendicular cut there. So it's good that we had to trim it more anyway. Okay, so here I'm just making a trimming cut to get the selvage off. Okay, and over here I'm going to cut it at 18 after I make sure this is all the way on 0. So if we do a quality inspection, you can see that here it's not an exact straight line. And we're going to do another quality inspection by turning it over into quarters. And you can see there's a little bit of a problem here. You can see that here that's not even. So we fix it. Okay, so if I make it even on this side, you can see the whole thing. I'm making this line is matching the edge of the fabric. And here I'm just going to trim off this excess because it's not straight. I'm going to go a little bit in to catch all this. Okay. And then I'm going to turn it the other direction to make sure it's square now. Okay, this looks good. Looks like a good square. And it is now 17 and a half. I didn't think I did that, but okay. 17 and a half. Now this one, okay, if we sew this right sides together, when we turn it over, actually we need to, I always have to think about what direction to have everything go, but the fabric has to be right sides together here so that when we turn it, we'll have, making sure I can tell which is the right side. I realize that my white fabric is a little bit bigger than the gray, and right now I'm fine with that because I can make sure I use the stitching lines on the gray and just trim off the white later. As long as everything is straight, it should be good. I'll grab some pins so I can baste this. Okay, I'm back with the straight pins, and I've also turned the quilt over. This is the front, this is the back, right sides together, and then the batting is here. I'm going to be sewing all the way around the edges to be able to birth this quilt, to be able to hide all of these raw edges inside the quilt itself. And so I'm going to use some straight pins to mark. I'm going to use some straight pins to hold on to the edges to keep them all secure. Now the important thing is to make sure that everything is the way you expect it to be. Keep it nice and flat, and make sure there's no bumps or anything like that in here. Since I'm not trimming just yet, I want to make sure that I don't wind up being too short. Probably using way more pins than I need now. Okay. And since I didn't leave an opening here, I'm planning on going ahead and sewing all the way around to make sure all the edges are neat when I put them together. What I want to do here on the front of the quilt is leave a little make a little opening to be able to turn the quilt over, to turn the quilt right side out. So I'm just making sure that I'm only have one layer, making sure I'm close to the center because that's where the applique is going to be. Okay. And I'm also doing a quality inspection. This right here looks like it's a little bit too lumpy, so I'll smooth that out. Okay, I think this looks good. I can take this over to the sewing machine and do some sewing. Now I'm going to clip the corners. Just make a triangular cut. Make sure you don't catch the seam because you want to leave that intersection there. I'm going to trim off all this white edge. But before I do that, I just wanted, since my time is running out, I just wanted to show you what I'm going to do next. Is to use this opening that I left in the quilt top to turn the quilt right side out. Just want to make sure you want to be careful that you're not ripping the cloth any more than you need to. But the applique is pretty big, so even if I do end up ripping the cloth a little bit, it's not going to matter much. Then poke out the corners. I'm going to turn this back around so I can do the trimming, but I just wanted to show you, you can poke out the corners with your finger. You can use screwdriver, chopstick. There's a bunch of tools that you can buy that also do that for you. And once you do that, you have a straight quilt top. Like this. And then I can put my applique on top of it. I can sew this down around the edges, do any other quilting that I want to do on it, add any other applique that I want to add around the edges, and then this will be done. I also have to put a label on the back. This video is one of a series of videos that I'm doing where I show you each of the quilts that I have unfinished. I hope that you sewed along with me so that you can get an entry in the drawing. Just make sure you let me know in the comments below what you worked on and how much you got done today in your 15 minutes to quilt. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so you don't miss tomorrow's video. If you missed yesterday's video, there's a link on the screen where you can catch it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate your support, and I'll see you again tomorrow. What project are you working on while you're watching this video? Let me know. Today we're going to be working on the Shakespeare in the Park quilt. It's a popular pattern by Judy Martin, and a lot of other quilters have also made this quilt. So I'm pulling this out of the box. It looks like the top might already be finished, but I remember that there's a problem in the corner. I thought that I had to make one more block to be able to finish this. So you can see here, this is a quilt that's made on point, and it's missing this corner that would make it square. You can see it's missing this section here. So look here, this corner is what it's supposed to look like. It's nice and square. Okay, it looks like it's missing two corners so far. See, it doesn't have a square edge on this side. And this side does have a square so that it looks properly rectangular. It's missing two of the corner triangles, and it has two of the corner triangles. So let's see what else is in the box. It has a corner triangle and another corner triangle. So there's two corner triangles. But these don't look like the ones that are in the pattern. Here's what it looks like in the book, but it's by Judy Martin. If you look at the pattern, you can see that all four of the edges here look the same. They all have the two colors on the sides. And this one has a square on the side, so it's not made the same way. And you can also see that these are not right next to each other. They're set on point, And if you look at the pattern, these two are right next to each other. So I guess today we'll be ripping out some seams. Okay, so the timer has been set. I have the quilt top here. I have one of the corners, and I have the pattern and the seam ripper. My number one rule is think before you rip. I have allergy problems today, so what we're going to do is compare this to the quilt pattern. So it looks like this square needs to be taken out. These two need to be next to each other, so they need also to be taken out. Now you can see that there are corner triangles on both of these squares, so I can probably leave these corner triangles. So I can leave the star with the corner triangle and the star with the corner triangle, and see if maybe I can find a way to make these work the way they are. And then maybe I just need another corner triangle here. So if but then I would only need two corner triangles and then one big triangle, one end triangle. I need two of these side triangles and one of the actual corner triangle. Let me compare that to one that's already been made just to make sure that the thinking is right here. Okay. So here I have the star and the snail's trail block, and here I have the two stars and the snail's trail block. So yeah, I think that makes sense that I just need to separate this out and separate these two pieces out. And the second block, I don't know why I kept remembering that I needed to make a block, but here it doesn't look like I need to make a block except for the corner. They both are in the same condition pretty much. I think what happened was these are blocks that are made for the quilt itself, and I just am repurposing them to be corner triangles, and I just repurposed them the wrong way. Okay, so let's get to ripping. Yep, you can see everything. Looks like a very messy background here. So I just need to rip this out here and this from here once I get done with that. There's a way that you can use this ball and put the seam ripper inside, but then you run the risk of possibly tearing the fabric, and I don't want to do that with blocks that have already been made. Looks like there were some other mistakes in here that I fixed, because there's two seams next to each other. Once I take some of the stitches out from one side, I should be able to pull the thread to get the rest of the seam done. Yep. Looks like my tripod is still moving around, wanting to get a better look. I did try to tighten it up, but it's not working. Have to be careful you don't jab, when you jab the fabric, you get it out because you don't want to make holes in the fabric. Okay, we've got these pieces separated. Need to get the square. This one's going to be the wrong direction. But we'll see if we can find one in the other block. Oops, this way. Oh, this is wonderful. I'm not going to have to rip out the corner triangles because it looks like it's going to make a good end here. So I need to piece this very edge here and sew these together. Okay, I'll go ahead and sew these together because that's something I can quickly do without having to find the fabric and cutting it. So I'll just sew these two pieces together. Okay, so I need these two. And when I sew these together, I want to make sure that I'm catching the intersection here to make the points match correctly. So just like we did on the kaleidoscope blocks, we need to make sure that we're catching these little points. So I'm putting a pin at the intersection. A little bit hard because the fabric is pressed this direction. But I can see here that I have them in the points. And then this one's in the point. And this one's in the point. Make sure these are straight. And put the rest of the pin down. Usually I like to alternate the seams so that I can nest them. Both of these seams are going in the same direction. They're both pressed in the same direction, but I'm going to leave them that way because of the way they're sewn into the rest of the piece. You see how this is sewn this direction, and if I try to alternate seams, I'm going to wind up with having a crooked piece here. It'll make the quilt lumpy. Have the walking foot in the machine now. Started with a little leader just to make sure that the thread didn't bunch up on the quilt tip. I'm going to go ahead and sew this even though my time is up because I want to have this done. This one, the seam isn't all the way. This is not going to give me a good point because a 1/4 inch is not in the right spot, but there's so many points in this one, I don't think it'll matter. Likewise here you can see it's not correct. Sacrifice the dot. Okay, 15 minutes is up. I have 2 triangles put together, and now all I have to do is put the end pieces, and this quilt be making a lot of progress. This video is one of a series of videos where I'm showing you each of my projects one by one and working on them 15 minutes at a time. I hope you enjoy seeing all of the progress on all of my quilts and get some inspiration, get some advice. I hope that you join me and sew along with me. And if you do, just let me know in the comments below what you worked on, how much you got done in your 15 minutes, and I'll give you an entry in the drawing. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you again tomorrow. What projects are you working on while you're watching this video? Hello, welcome back to Quilt in Color. Today we're going to be working on a mystery box here for our 15 minutes to quilt. There's a box that's nicely packaged. Over here it says BOM and scraps. So let's open the package and see what we've got today. Let's open our mystery box. That looks like a present. And it says BOM and scraps. And in here looks like there's some block of the month blocks, a bunch of them, and a bunch of scraps. There's no note. There's no name of the pattern. Bunch of random papers from other places. Okay, so let's look at the blocks. See what they look like. It's a nice lime green one. Another one, purple and green. There's a blue one. And green, purple and green. Lots of different colors on this one. This one needs some ironing again. Let me count these real quick. There's 15, so it's more than 12. I don't know if it's accurate, but what I remember about this quilt is that there was an applique part of it also. I kind of vaguely remember strips of color. Yeah, I guess I do. I see some blue strips here. So I think I remember like blue strips sewed together as a background, and then something is appliqued on top of it, and then the blocks go around it. I also vaguely remember this as a pattern that was in a book, but I don't know if that's true or not. The fact that it says BOM on the box means that maybe it isn't. Maybe I did find it someplace online, but I kind of remember a book that came as a part of this. So I'm gonna, I guess today we get to look through some books to see if maybe I can find the book that goes with this pattern. So that we don't go on a wild goose chase looking for a book that doesn't exist, I went through my blog, looked for BOMs, block of the months, batik, all sorts of things. I couldn't find it. But then finally I remembered the word wildflower. And I looked up the word wildflower on my blog, and yes, this is a book. It's called Wildflower Sampler. So now we are looking for a book called Wildflower Sampler by Linda Milligan. I'm going to set the timer, and we're just going to look for 15 minutes. You get to look at my books, and hopefully we'll find it here. So let's get started. I moved some furniture to make some room for the camera. So if you see any dust bunnies or actual bunnies, you'll have to forgive me. So let's start over here. We have a pattern, crossroads. We've got wedding ring template, 501 quilting motifs, Better Homes and Gardens embroidery, folk art quilts, Big Book of Fat Quarter quilts, community quilts. I hope these are not backwards for you. There's architecture and Islamic arts, American patchwork and quilting, fanciful folk art, liberated medallion quilts, folk art quilts, the fabrics of fairy tale. I think this is my oldest book, The Romance of the Patchwork Quilt, simply red work, cotton and wool, Miss Jump's farewell. App is for applique. Amish inspired quilts. The Art of Boutique, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Modern Roots. Joyful Stitching. Weekend Quilting. Civil War Legacies 3. Beautiful Botanicals. And then there's some books here that are not quilt books. There's a couple patterns here, but we're looking for a book, so that doesn't count. Let's on to the next shelf. We're in row 2 of these books now. We've got Textiles of the Banjara. Again, I don't know how to pronounce that. Maybe Banjara. But there's Indian quilting here. Quick and easy quilt making. Fabric silhouettes, quilted treasures from the family album. Art quilt workbook. Stars a la carte. Quilt the Beloved Country. Boutiques and Beyond. Fuse and Tell Journal Quilts. Singer, the Quilting Bible. Judy Martin, The Ultimate Book of Quilt Block Patterns. Sets and Borders. Mindful Meandering, 132 original continuous line designs. Becky Goldsmith, Applique Outside the Lines. Pairing Up, 2 block quilts. Stained glass quilts made easy. Quick watercolor quilts. Quilter's Block Bible. Embroidery Stitch Bible. 60 machine quilting patterns. With fabric and thread. Helen's Copy and Use Quilting Patterns. I use this one a lot. Ribbon embroidery. Quilt Maker's Guide, Basics and Beyond. Sweet Clara and the Freedom Quilt. Elm Creek Quilts. There's a rotary cutter, Basics and Beyond. A Gathered Garden by Carol Armstrong. Barbara Brackman, Facts and Fabrications Unraveling the History of Quilts and Slavery. Benny Harper Quilt Album. The Complete Stitch Directory. Japanese Kimono Dolls. That was not a quilting book. We're leaving it here. Christmas All Through the House. Maybe I'll put this one up here. Okay. Learn to do ribbon embroidery in just one day. Scrap Quilts, The Art of Making Do. Dancing Dolls to Sew. The Collection Quilt. This one also has like bookshelf quilts and things like that. So many of these books make me want to start cutting up new fabric and start a new quilt. Home for the Harvest, a collection of patchwork and applique. Jean Wells, Patchwork Quilts Made Easy. Cut Loose Quilts, Stack, Slice, Switch, and Sew. Books like this are great for beginning improv quilters because you're improvising the block and not the whole quilt, and so it makes it easier for you to start. A Quilter's Arc, Foundation Piecing. Basket Bonanza, 14 quilts from Best Loved Blocks. You'll notice that I have the books in color order. I thought that would be a nice way, since they're all quilting books, a nice way to show them, but I don't really like it because it's hard to find any books when you do that. Donna Cooler's Encyclopedia of Quilting. Firm Foundations, Techniques for Quilt Blocks for Precision Piecing. 2 books on foundation paper piecing. Scrap, Patchwork, and Quilting. It's surprising to me because I don't foundation piece, or I haven't done much of it yet. Country Comforts, Quilts for Casual Living. Stash Happy, Patchwork Quilts. The Quilt Story. Easy Applique Samplers to Mix and Match. "20 Little Patchwork Quilts with Full-Size Templates." Miniature Baltimore Album Quilts. I might have bought this one. I thought miniature would be easier, and it is not. Miniature Baltimore Album quilts will be much harder than the bigger ones. Simple Traditions, 14 quilts to warm up your home. Scrap Basket Surprises. Best-selling Bazaar Patchwork. Block Magic 2. Block Magic 2. Not sure I pronounced that right. Creative Finishing Touches with Fabric. Pink Ribbon Quilts. You'll see some of these books have library stamps on them, this one and that one, because I bought them used from the library. Patchwork Loose Christmas. Pink Lemonade and Other Delights. A Month of Sundays. Sunday morning quilts. This is a good one also for improv quilts for beginners. The applique book. I want to make a squirrel quilt one day. You can see there's a squirrel pattern on the cover. Pretty patchwork. Fabric samplers. Cups and saucers. Patchwork Lowe's embroidery. Quilted memories. Art Deco quilts. Rotary Magic. And the big one, red and white quilts. Look, that fell on the floor. It's called Friendships, offering techniques and inspiration for writing on quilts. Okay, done with that row. Let's move on to the next row. Okay, the last row. There's Friendship Offering. Picture this. The Quilt Maker's Gift. Creative quilting. Fun and easy scrap quilts. Big book of small quilts. We'll do the rest of these pretty quick because our 15 minutes is up. Quilting the Savory Garden. Say it with quilts. Sophisticated stitching. Playful patchwork. Quilts and community. Civil War Sewing Circle. Quilts. Quick colorful quilts. Farm Girl Vintage, Mini Quilts, Simply Minnow Quilts, Mini Quilts from Traditional Designs, The Quilter's Companion, Color Splash Quilts. This is Patchwork Minus Math Work. That's a nice one. I like that one for designing quilts because it tells you the sizes to use for block settings. 101 Patchwork Patterns, Luminous Landscapes, Creative Haven Coloring Book. Paper Piece Mini Quilts, Quick, Colorful, Casual, Comfy Quilts. Small Talk, Bits and Pieces, Drafting for the Creative Quilter. Great Patchwork, Working with Triangles. Block Magic, Quilts on the Double. The Modern Medallion, Fantasies and Flowers. Jingle All the Way. The Art of Machine Piecing, Sylvia's Bridal Sampler. McCall's Book of Needlecrafts, Beautiful Beaded Embroidery. Floor Quilts, Encyclopedia of Classic Patterns, Quilting Pieces of the Past, Simple Shapes, Spectacular Quilts, Simple Joy of Quilting, the Classic American Book Collection, The Ultimate Quilting Book, Quilts, 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 The Weekend Quilter, Story Quilts and How to Make Them, Dreaming from the Journal Page, Cuddle Me Quick books, Paper Piecing with Alex Anderson, Simply Stars, Colorful Stitchery. There's a couple Peacemaker calendars and Grandma's Best full-size quilt blocks. And the bottom row has other kind of crafts and repair things, but they're not quilt books. Unfortunately, we do not have this book. So I went through the rest of the shelves over here. There's only one more shelf over here that has quilt books on it. This one. And the top shelf is library books and the rest of them are magazines. So it's not here. I also looked another bookshelf upstairs that didn't have the book that I'm looking for. So chances are the book is probably in another box hidden away, or maybe it's stuck with some fabric or something else. So I'll just keep moving on. I'll leave a note in the box to say what book we're looking for and that we haven't found it yet. And that way, next time I pick up this box, I won't duplicate the search again. Sometimes that's just how it works. With the 15 minutes to stitch, you don't make as much progress as you would have hoped, but there is progress, right? Because we know that the book is not on a bookshelf. So this video is part of a series of videos that I'm doing where I show you each of the quilts that I have in the works, the UFOs and the works in progress that just haven't been finished for one reason or another, and see if I can't make 15 minutes worth of progress and see how I can keep it from being stalled. From the videos I showed you earlier, that it really is so much easier to come at the quilt again with a new perspective without being frustrated, and I can make a lot of progress, and now some of these quilts are no longer stalled, and I'm really excited about working on them some more. I hope that you did so along with me while I was looking at these books. If you did, just let me know in the comments below what you worked on and how much you got done today in your quilting, and I will give you an entry in the drawing. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Hello, welcome to Quilt in Color. Today is day 18 of the 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge. Today we're going to open this box. It looks like they're chocolate covered cookies, but there's no cookies in here, which I guess is a good thing because they probably would not be very tasty after so long. Inside the box, there's a bag. There's a bag of blocks. And you can see from the label here, it's a signature block this one is dated 2003. This was a part of a signature exchange from the Quilt Swappers news group. The news group hasn't been around for a long time, but it's going to be fun to see all these names and remember all the conversations that we had with these wonderful people. So let's make a plan for these and we'll get started. I thought about starting without you and trimming some blocks already so that we can just sew together, but once I started trimming them, I thought there were things that I wanted to tell you about the trimming process. So when you have blocks that come from a variety of people, each person has their own definition of seam allowance, so you'll find that some of the blocks will not be the same size. So you have two options here. You can either trim all of the blocks to the same size, to the smallest block size, or you can try to repair the block so that you can get the size that you want. I think I'm going to go ahead and trim these at 4.5 inches, and I'm going to mark. You can use washi tape or something to remind you of where it is that you're going to be cutting, and that way you don't have to keep finding that line over and over again. And that would mean that the middle point is like 2.25. I'm going to go ahead and mark that so I can eyeball the center of the block, and that way if I'm trimming from both sides, then I would be able to estimate the center of the block and make sure that it's the same size that I'm cutting. Now, one of the issues with this kind of a block is you're going to have to meet these seams, but I think that this one should be okay, because here you can see the 1/4 inch is going to be here and here, so it's going to match in the intersection. I think I already trimmed this side. So I'm making sure that this is lining up. This lines up to the place where I want it to go. This should be about the center of the block, which it is. It just looks bigger because this part is going to be trimmed off. Okay, so we got this one block done. Oops, here, that looks right to me. Looks centerish. Maybe I can use if I put this on a line, then I'll be able to do better with making it even. So if I put this here, I'll be 2.5 inches, so the center line is over here. I actually folded it so that I would know that it's in the right place, and it is on the fold. you can see over here that I folded it, and you can see that there's a little faint line of where the fold is, and that makes it easier to see that the block is centered properly. If you have a ruler that's the right size, that would make it faster, so you can do two sides at the same time. Actually, I could probably do two sides at the same time on this one, but with this ruler. When I go the other way, I'll be at 2.5 that way. I just want to make sure I'm trimming on both sides, because if I only trim everything from one section, then the names won't be in the middle. And I'll have problems with the signature block too. I'm going to trim a few more of these off camera, but I do want to say sometimes when you do a signature swap or when you do a block swap, sometimes some people put something unique on some of the blocks, like the smiley face, for example. And what they did was they said in the news group that, you know, if you have a block with a smiley face, let me know and I'll send you a special prize. So that was another fun thing to add to a block swap in a community. I'm going to trim the rest of these offline, but I did want to show you that I have chosen the pattern for this quilt. I want to make a trip around the world setting. I know that the signatures won't then be upside down, but I'm okay with that because I can always turn the quilt around in different ways when I want to share them. Remember how to do this now. This would be I think this one goes the same way as this, and then this one goes with that. This one goes with this one. Here's mine. Oops. And then it just keeps repeating over and over again, so that there's a trip around the world setting. There's a little line that goes all the way across over and over again, all the way around the center. Okay, so I'll trim a little bit offline, and then we'll start sewing. That could happen as you're working on a block like this, is you want to make sure that all of your corners are matching in the same exact space, which is not necessarily going to happen unless you're very careful with the cutting and making sure that you're cutting correctly on here. And it's not something that I'm willing to make that extra effort to do. So what my plan is to deliberately make them a little bit off, so that when I put these blocks together and they're not exactly at the point, it's a feature and not a bug. Okay, my time is up, but I wanted to show you this block so you can see it. As you can see, I made some pretty good progress in the 15 minutes. I cut a few blocks and then I sewed a few of them together and have chosen a layout, so it's pretty good. I can just continue on for the rest of the blocks. This video is a part of a series of videos where I show you each of the quilts that I have in the works. I hope that you enjoy watching them and seeing how I revive all of these quilt projects that have been languishing. I hope you've been sewing along with me, and if you have, please leave a comment in the comment box and let me know what you worked on and how much you got done today, and I'll give you an entry in the drawing, which will be held on January 1st. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all your support, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Hello, welcome to Quilt and Color. Today on day 19 of 15 Minutes to Quilt, when we were looking through the books in my library, we came across this book, Home for the Harvest, and I remember that there was a pattern in here that I wanted to make. It's called Forest Floor. It's basically a whole bunch of squares, and then there's an applique border. There's another picture of it in here also. And this one. As soon as I got this book and I found this pattern, I started collecting the little squares in order to have enough. I put them in this container, and they're basically just little squares. And as I worked on a project, I would just save one square from each of the projects I was working on if it fit the harvest theme. My original goal was to just have one square of each fabric, but eventually I knew that it was taking a long time, so then I started cutting more than one square. I haven't counted these, so I don't know if I have enough, but I think that I do, so I'll go ahead and just get started and start sewing some. So today we're going to be working on the Forest Floor quilt.
is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Flying, get on board. We're smiling on top of the world. Dangerous times, don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world, but keep the sky on your mind. Flying, get on board. We're smiling on top of the world. Flying, get on board. We're smiling
You can see there's 5 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A little bit more on the next one. So that's pretty good progress for the day. Sometimes there's good progress, and it's very satisfying to be able to make quick, easy progress like this. This video is one of a series of videos that I'm making this month where I show you how much progress I can make in 15 minutes at a time. I hope you sewed along with me today, and if you did, please leave a comment in the comment box and let me know what you worked on today and how much you got done in your 15 minutes. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support. We'll see you tomorrow. Hope you have a great day. Some quilters don't like to work with scraps. They find that it's difficult to handle all those little pieces, and it's hard to cut because each piece is a different shape. Other people really like working with scrap quilts. All the variety of the fabric makes a quilt a joy to work with, and all quilters have a size that they're not willing to work with. For example, when I showed you the postage stamp quilt, these are 1.5-inch squares. Some quilters wouldn't like to work with them, but I do. And then some quilters would decide that whatever was left over, whatever was too small to fit in this quilt, would be thrown in the trash. But I don't do that. As you know, is that when I showed you the dots and dashes quilt, I take the leftovers that are too small to fit in the postage stamp quilt and put them in my dots and dashes quilt. And you probably assume that anything that didn't fit into the dots and dashes quilt would be eligible to be put in the trash. And it is. I did put the leftovers in the trash. But then sometimes I raid the trash to use even the smaller pieces. And that's what happened with this quilt that I started earlier. I fused little strips of fabric that were too small to be put into a quilt and fused them onto a background fabric. And instead of placing these strips onto a particular shape so that I would be able to do that, I just put all of them on a big sheet of paper, cut out the shape that I needed, made that, and this one is just made with the leftovers of that scrap. This is leftovers from my camel quilt. And since it's already placed and fused, all I have to do is quilt it down, maybe add some eyes or something for this little cat, and then we can call this quilt done. So let's get started. Okay, so here's a little quilt. I found a backing fabric that I thought would work. It's a little smaller than the square, but I think that's fine. I don't want the quilt to be that big. And I also found a batting. I also found the batting scrap that will work for this quilt. So I'll just trim this off here. And then we can sandwich this quilt right here at the sewing machine. So the backing has to be put face down onto the table, and then the batting goes on top of it. This one's pretty close to size, so I'll make sure I'm really careful to make sure the entire background fabric is covered up. And then this goes on top of that. I want to be careful of where the backing starts here because this is larger than the other side. So if you feel it, this is here. So maybe I can put it a little bit lower because I have more space here. Actually, the backing is here. So to me, that looks pretty centered. So I'll go ahead and sandwich this quilt. I'll go ahead and pin this quilt. I could try to birth this, but I've done that several times, so we'll go ahead and put a proper binding on this quilt. Now you may wonder what I'm going to do with something so tiny. I like to make a quilt once a month. I make a small quilt once a month. It's a nice satisfying way to get a finish every month. And that way when I'm working on a long-term project, I still have this fun little thing that shows that I do actually have finishes. And I have a bulletin board where I put all of my little quilts and I rotate them. I rotate them from time to time, and it's just a fun way to have something fun. These also make great gifts. You could use this on a card maybe. I'm just going to free motion the cat on here. You can see that the little piece is missing over here, a little piece of fabric, but that's not a big deal. The way it was placed in the box is kind of awkward, but I can always put something else on top of it when I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and use the thread that was already in the machine. These quilts are very casual, so there's not a lot of rules about what you do and don't do on it. And you can choose what kind of stitches you want to put on it. I'm just going to free motion this one, but I have in the past used some embroidery stitches. That was really pretty. When there's a fabric that seems to be pulling up, you can just go around a different direction. And because there's all sorts of different fabrics in here, you want to make sure that you secure it properly by having a lot of different kinds of stitching, by making sure that you have a lot of stitching. So basically I just sewed all the way around the edge of the outline of the cat, but I'm going to continue making sure there's lots of stitching on it so that all these little tiny pieces are secure. And it really doesn't matter. You can choose what kind of design you want to put on it. You can use decorative stitching, whatever works best for you. These seem pretty secure. I don't know, do I want a dress on this? No, not really. Hat? No. Ball? I'm not really feeling that piece. That can be something else or nothing at all. So now on here I can add I can find other scraps for the eyes and for the rest of this body here. So let me go through my trash can and see what I could find. Like this scrap, I think it'll fit pretty well with this coloring. There's the pink ones we've been using for all sorts of things. I want a darker color for the eyes. This will work. Okay, let's do that. I'm trying to mimic the shape and size of the original pieces so it doesn't look out of place. That'll look good. There's one of these too. I'm sure that red one will work as well. Oh, there's another one. So I'm going through my trash can and finding other pieces and trying to make sure that they're similar enough in color and style so that they won't look out of place. I think that looks good. And then I'd like to have some eyes here for the cat. I could make the eyes smaller, but I think the large ones are pretty good. Maybe I'll make a nose. That looks like an owl's nose. I don't know what a cat's nose looks like. Maybe it just needs to be smaller. I like that. So I'll go ahead and pre-motion this. This one moved a little bit to the right side, but that's okay. I just make sure when I have my hand near the needle that my foot is off of the pedal so I don't accidentally stitch on myself. And I also stay outside of the presser foot area. So a little too close there. That one's better. And I'm out of bobbin thread, but it's just in time, I think. Oh, yep. I was stitching over all the way around just so that it wouldn't look like an applique piece. It would fit everything else. But here you can see that the cat is pretty much finished. All I have to do now is to trim this quilt and bind it, and it'll be finished. And my 15 minutes is up. This video is one of a series of videos where I am finishing up some of the projects that I've been working on. And if you did, just leave a comment on what you worked on and how much progress you made in your 15 minutes. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you again tomorrow. For day 21 of our 15 minutes to quilt challenge, we're going to be working on this box. It's got all sorts of fancy things. There's velvet, yellow things with glittery type stuff on it. There's some black lace. African crazy. Let's get started. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up this treasure box. Okay, it looks like there are some blocks in here. Let's look at the blocks. This one is pieced to a foundation. There's some fabric that has been pieced in a crazy quilt style. There's some black fabric and there's lots of cotton fabric. This one kind of looks like a sunset or sunrise. There's a bit of lace. There's a couple of pieces of shiny fabric. There's a Adinkra fabric here. There's another Adinkra fabric. So all sorts of fancy things. This one looks like a maybe silk or something like that. This one is velvety. It's got a little sequence on it. All sorts of exciting things on this block. Let's pull the next one out. This one likewise has it has the same velvety fabric. It's really fun to touch. There's shiny fabric. There's some black fabric, mostly oranges, 3 blacks. Looks like this is the edge lines of where the crazy quilting would happen. And there's an applique piece that hasn't been appliqued on. Maybe we can do applique today. We'll save that one for later. Or this one we could also applique this one as well. This one looks like another piece that's ready to be appliqued. It has all sorts of fun things on here. Looks like there was some purple thread, but I don't think there's enough for this applique. There's one that just needs a few more pieces added on for the foundation before the embellishment can happen. This one looks like it's got a nice central motif from an Ankara print, from an African print. There's some shiny fabrics on both sides. All of these are pretty shiny. This one's kind of silky. Nice collection of fabrics. And this one looks like it's the most complete. And you can see on here there's a sun, there's a leaf, there's some nice prints over here, there's beadwork on this side, there's extra beads on here, triangles, beads on a lace. It looks like a river with fish on it. I guess I'll turn it this way. There's beads with, it looks like a river or a stream with fish in it. There's some huts and a tree. Looks like a great place for our king to live, our African prince to live. So I think from my recollection there were supposed to be 9 of these blocks and there's only 6 that have been made so far. But instead of piecing, I think maybe we can just continue on with adding some of these embellishments to this quilt. Maybe we can add the butterfly in this orange design, and maybe the green, whatever I'm in the mood for, I guess. Let me show you the extra things that are in here just so you'll know. There's this ribbon. There's a shiny fabric, which I don't think is in the quilt yet. There's some black lace. This orange has little beads on it. Maybe we could add some people to the quilt, because our prince was going to need somebody to rule over. Maybe he needs a wife. There's some yellow lace. There's some cheesecloth. I don't think I put cheesecloth on this one, but I don't know. Oh, there's animal beads. Oh, those look like fun things to add. Maybe we'll save those for today. I don't think we'll be able to do all of this in 15 minutes, but it's nice to dream. There's some green. That would be a nice thing to add. Or maybe there's already some green in here. I think there's a little bit of green in here already. There's some Japanese fabric we could add if we were wanting to. It is a nice, it's the right colorway. That'd be an interesting addition. And there's some other fabrics that are already in the quilt, so it'll be good to keep continuity for the other blocks. Oh, there's another bead. What else is in here? There's some purple fabric. There's a pattern for a camel. It's a little hub, but it looks pretty nice. I don't see any foundation papers for the remaining blocks, so there's only 6 blocks and we need 9. But since we don't have the foundation fabric, maybe we can just go on to add the embellishments that are already been planned for this quilt. Okay, so these blocks don't have embellishments planned, so we'll just go ahead and leave these alone, and we'll see how many of these we can work on in 15 minutes. Okay, I have some purple floss handy, and even though there's no purple on this block, there is purple in this one, so I think that'll be fine. And I think I'll just sew around this thing to make this applique stay. I think this is just basting stitches around here to keep the edges under. Do some sort of blanket stitch so that I don't have to worry about neat stitching. I'm going through lots of layers because I have the foundation and this piece, whatever is underneath here, I don't know. But it's pretty easy to go through. It's not a problem at all. course, I say that right as I get a problem with the thread here. If I keep this close to the end but not too close, I'll keep the floss length smaller. This was already cut this size. It was just on the table. It was on the blocks of floss. So I'm just using it the size it was. I didn't cut it for this project. I really like the idea of crazy quilting because it lets you it lets you add all sorts of different kinds of motifs, and there's a casualness to it. I know you can be more precise with crazy quilts, but I think you can also choose whether or not you want to have very precise stitching on the crazy quilting, or whether you want to just have a more casual improv look to your quilt. As you know, I like the more laid back, relaxed approach to enjoy it and not be stressed out about all the details, because you can see the hand of the maker in it. But they are obviously ruled times for precision, and you have seen already that there are some quilts where I try to have all the points match and try to do my best in getting everything looking as good as possible. This one I do want to make it as good as possible, but my definition of good does not mean that the stitches have to be all of the same length. This, to me, as long as this applique will stay under different conditions, even if the quilt is tossed around, and as long as it lasts over time, I think I'll be happy. Okay, not going all the way through to the bottom, which doesn't matter whether or not I do, because it'll be covered eventually. There's another knot or something in here. This is just curly a little bit, so maybe that's what's causing the knotting. I don't know. This is a knit part of a shirt that I had when I was starting to make this quilt, or at least one time when I was working on it last. I had a very calm quilt that I was working on like a pastel lavender color, and it was winter time, and so this bright orange shiny fabric is a big change from that, and it's a nice refreshing change. I've seen another crazy quilt that was orange, that made me really want something like this. want something with buttons. Maybe a button in it. To make sure that you can see what's happening in the camera. Hopefully so far you have been able to. I really enjoyed all the excitement over this 15 minutes to quilt challenge. I'm glad that it's helping you as much as it helps me in making sure that I have some time to do some quilting and making progress on my work. A lot of people are getting their Christmas presents ready. Looks like my size of the stitching has changed. Even though I'm doing the same stitch over here, it's a little bit bigger, and over here it just got smaller as I went along. This is more on the edge, and not exactly at the 1/4 inch, which is fine, I think. I'm fine with it. You can still see the purple all the way around. been a lot of fun to see all of the Vlogmas videos that a lot of other quilters have on their channels. See them opening their gifts and coming up with ideas of having a video every single day. It's a lot of work to do that, but it's a lot of fun too, to be able to read them, to watch them. Thinking about doing a running stitch down this way, but I think since I have the purple thread, I can use it to, since I have enough extra, I can use that to put the butterfly on. Don't have my scissors right here, but the same seam ripper will work. One down, little progress, not bad. In our 15 minutes to stitch, I was able to add all of this applique all the way around. This video is one of a series of videos where I show you each of the projects that I've been working on over the years and uncovering them and making 15 minutes worth of progress on each of them. I hope you're enjoying looking at my old projects and enjoying the process and learning a few things along the way. I'm really enjoying reading the comments and seeing all the projects that you've been working on and how this challenge is inspiring you to keep working on your projects. I hope you did get a chance to sew today, and if you did, just let me know in the comments what you worked on and how much you got done in your 15 minutes. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so you don't miss any of the other videos. And if you missed yesterday's video, there's a link on the screen where you can see it. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and we'll see you again tomorrow. There won't be any prizes in this series of videos in the 2023 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge. But there definitely will be prizes in the 2024 15 Minutes to Quilt Challenge, and I do hope that you'll join me in December for that challenge. Be sure that you subscribe so you don't miss it. I've provided a link here and in the description box to the other two videos for this compilation of the 15 Minutes to Stitch 2023. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of your support, and I'll see you in the next video.